I'm sorry. My name is David was trying to hand me a wonton. Wonton. I was like, no, I can't have a wonton. Go. No, I can't do the wontons. I love you. Go away.
Hello and welcome back to The Panelists, a bookish deep dive podcast where we take bookish genres and tropes and overanalyze them to the point that people think we hate reading, but at least we have fun doing it. My name is Jaysen.
I'm Niah.
My name is Marines.
And my name is Lizzy.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited that we are back. If you have been following our podcast, we basically had this grand decision to read through the history of romance books and sort of just overanalyze them and kind of see where the tropes and things that exist in romance books today, where they came from, how they came to be. We started with Pamela, which is considered the first ever romance book, and it also by some is considered the first modern novel, and we all collectively hated it, so that was really exciting. And then we read Pride and Prejudice, which we all collectively really enjoyed, and I feel like it set the bar really high. And today we are going to be talking about Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is sort of interesting because we discussed this last week on the podcast, but with Pride and Prejudice, one of us had not really read it, which was me, and everybody else had read it, although Niah hadn't really read it. She DNF'd it. And Lizzy still hasn't read the last chapter. So have any of us really read it at this point?
We did our best.
We did our best. But with Jane Eyre, we discussed last time that only one of us, which was Marines, have actually read this book before, and it was brand new for the other three of us. So what I want to ask, this was new to almost all of us, what were your first impressions of this book? Because I don't know about you, but I went into this book fully blind. I did not know what to expect, and I had so many very visceral reactions to this book. Before we get into our initial reactions, I want to start with Mari. What is your history with this book? Because you didn't have first impressions of this book, so I want to start with you, and then we'll get into some of our first impressions.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this in previous episode, but in high school, I was reading really big books or classics in order to get accelerated reader points. So Jane Eyre was one of the books that I picked up. I was in 9th grade, and I can still vividly remember being on my mom's couch reading this and having all of those big emotions of not expecting the Gothic side of it and really falling in love with Jane. And I was 15, so give me a break here. Loving Rochester.
Okay.
I was 15 and that man had a manner, okay?
All right. You've made some good points.
But overall, I just really fell in love with the book and being who I am. And same thing that happened with Pride and Prejudice. I've just continued to reread it throughout the course of my life. So I've reread this a bunch of times. In my 20s, the pendulum swung where then I started really hating Rochester. And then in my 30s, now I'm kind of I get it. I don't hate him. He did the best that he could at some points. He did the worst that he could at some points. So it's somewhere in the middle where I kind of mellowed out, because in my 20s I was burn that man down. So that's my full history.
Wow, that's a particular way of attacking
in the fire.
Very pointed. Lizzy, let's go to you. What are some of your first impressions that you had about this book?
Okay, first impressions, I thought this was a Jane Austen novel growing up. Whenever I saw pictures of it, I did not see the Gothic side of it. I was just oh, this is another Jane Austen. I actually thought it was almost an autobiography because I didn't know the last name Austen. I just saw Jane.
Oh, so yeah.
Growing up now reading it, I also didn't expect it to feel kind of paranormal. You know, when you're first reading it, just
yes.
The atmosphere of it was so unexpected, and I think that was actually my favorite part of it.
I love that you thought it was a Jane Austen, maybe it was the story of Jane Austen in her young years as Jane Eyre, and then she gets married to Walter Austen, and that's how she gets her last name.
Walter.
her rise to power, the life and times of Jane Eyre. Niah, what about you?
My answer is a lot less insightful. I thought that's a classic book. I thought, oh well, that's one of the classics, that over there. I really had nothing.
Really?
Interesting.
Not wrong.
Empty. I'm excited to hear more about that. I had no idea this was a Gothic novel, and so when I started reading and things were kind of creepy, I was a little freaked out because I was oh, this is kind of ghosty and creepy and a little witchy. You mentioned the paranormal, but we'll talk about some of the twists. I was like messaging you guys like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like some of the twists in this book are wild.
I was expecting it. Oh, never mind. We can get into that later. But later.
No. What were you saying? You were expecting.
I was going to say, okay, so after reading like Pride and Prejudice, I was expecting this to be more like Pride and Prejudice, right? Like before, I really didn't have much thought about Jane Eyre, like in general. But like after reading that, I was like, okay, well, it's going to be more of the same. After reading the first page, I thought this is going to be a little sadder. You know, it's gonna probably going to be a little sadder because it starts off rough. But like I was expecting a very similar tone, a very similar sort of like story, like arcs and things like that. So it was not that.
No, because Pride and Prejudice is like drama. This was like drama.
Like jaw dropping. Like I felt every emotion like reading this book. Like it was wild.
I think that like what we're going to discover too is like we're kind of going into the like genre of romance, and that is such a huge umbrella. And like even as we're going through the classics, we're already starting to encounter all of these subgenres because you know, Pride and Prejudice is a novel of manners. This is a Gothic romance. It's, you know, it's got that Gothic air, and so they're like really completely different. And I think they often get categorized together because they're classics and because you read them in school and things like that. But they are like two very, very different novels.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like we have a lot of thoughts on this book because I just have so many. But before we get into that, let's take a step back. First thing that we like to do on this show is we like to have some context. Marines, please give us a brief history of Jane Eyre. What was going on at the time? How did this book come to be? How did Jane Eyre become Jane Austen? No, not that part. Not that part. Please give us a history of this book so that we know where we are in time.
I wish I had like little like chimes like last time we were in the year 1813. The Napoleonic Wars were raging. The Industrial Revolution was reshaping society, and Jane Austen had just published Pride and Prejudice, showing us that a woman could say no to 2 proposals and still get a happy ending. We love that. Now we are fast forwarding 34 years, so a little bit of a smaller jump than from Pamela to Pride and Prejudice. It's 1847, and we're stepping into the world of Jane Eyre. So the Regency era is over. Queen Victoria has been on the throne for a decade now, and the early Victorian era is one that is largely made up of like a lot of different sort of contradictions. So on the surface, we have more progress, we have railways, we have empire. Underneath that, we have upheaval, poverty, and there's still like a lot of anxiety about class and gender and what kind of future Britain is like barreling toward because of all of this progress. So politically, Britain is relatively stable, but it's also still very conservative. Victorian England was deeply religious. Economically, wealth is still largely held by the upper classes, but there's increasing unrest among the working class, essentially because the system feels rigged against them. So the Industrial Revolution has matured, and workers are fueling Britain's rise as an industrial power, but they're getting very little in return. They can't vote, they can't organize legally, they can't rely on the government for support, and they're often blamed for their own poverty. So like the prevailing idea this time is you're poor by your own fault, and those who are rich are, you know, blessed by God. And
so
all
a lot
of this
has changed.
right. As we can see,
we've come so far.
Purely history. And so all of this was happening while that small elite lived comfortably, and they also got to claim the moral high ground. Socially, the Victorian ideal of the perfect woman is captured in this idea of what they call the angel in the house. And this is a phrase that's taken from a poem that was written in 1854, where the author praises his wife as the embodiment of wifely virtue. So the angel in the house is pious, she's pure, she's passive, and she's entirely devoted to her home and husband. Again, we've come so far.
She sounds like me. If I'm being totally honest,
am I the angel in the house?
Is this story about me?
So this ideal woman and us is soft-spoken, and she's self-sacrificing, and she is basically like this moral ornament in the domestic sphere. She also has no legal identity of her own. She has no claim to property. She has no political voice and no like sort of ambition outside of just being married. That brings us to the author, Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte was born in 1816, and she is one of 6 siblings. Her mother died when Charlotte was 5, and her 2 older sisters died young after being sent to a a harsh charity school, an experience that we see inspired Lowood School in Jane Eyre. So Charlotte and her surviving sisters, Emily and Anne, were intensely creative, and they wrote stories together from the time that they were young. And this is the first of the Bronte sisters that we will talk about, but it will not be the last. We'll see how many we cover. Charlotte worked as a teacher and a governess, both of which were among the few socially acceptable professions for educated but poor women, and she hated both jobs. Like, there are a lot of surviving letters from Charlotte where she talks about how much she hates being a governess and how thankless it is and how wearisome it is, like in her personal letters. So we see that reflected in Jane Eyre as well. In 1846, the Bronte sisters published a book of poetry under pseudonyms Kerr, Ellis, and Acton Bell. They choose ambiguous names to hide their gender and avoid the dismissive reviews that often greeted women. The book sold very, very few copies. I think it's like 1 or 2 copies of this book ever sold. But the next year, all 3 sisters published novels: Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, and Agnes Grey, which is truly one of the biggest like literary mic drop moments of all time. Like, that is, I don't know, what a talented family. You all just go on to publish 3 classic novels. Jane Eyre was published in 1847, again under the name Kerr Bell. It is an immediate success. Readers were hooked. The voice of Jane felt like something entirely new for readers. It sold well, it sold fast, and critics praised its originality, its emotional power, and its moral complexity. Of course, not everybody is charmed. Some critics are shocked by how bold Jane was, horrified by her refusal to submit to authority, particularly male authority. At first, no one knew who Kerr Bell was. Some people assumed that the author was a clergyman. Other people thought that maybe it was a nobleman who was like slumming it by writing novels. And then came the rumors that maybe Kerr, Ellis, and Acton Bell were all the same person. Like, it was one person writing under those 3 pseudonyms. So eventually, the Bronte sisters traveled to London to reveal themselves, proving that they were 3 women and 3 separate authors. Which, again, literary mic drop.
I want to know what happened at that reveal.
I know.
Imagine that. Like, imagine being there. Oh my God. Like, you pulled back.
Yeah.
So Jane Eyre was originally published under that pseudonym?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they all chose like male or like sort of ambiguous names so that nobody would know it was a woman who wrote the book.
Got it.
And then there were like, so many rumors about who these people were that they finally had to reveal themselves.
Oh, it's like Danny Francis. It's like the Danny Francis of their time.
Right.
I've
Come
heard
forward,
that
Danny.
before. I think the quality of the books might be a little different. And I will not elaborate on that. Sorry, Mari, did I shock you with that? Did you
Mari's
not know
so
that Danny
upset that she
Francis'
threw
book
her
Yeah.
was...
The quality was so bad. Okay. At the time Jane Eyre came out, the Victorian novel was booming, so we had a lot of big stories, serialized dramas, and lots of morality tales about virtue, class, and so on. So you had the social novels of people like Dickens, you had the sentimental, suffering heroines of domestic fiction, and the Gothic thrillers full of shadows and secrets. So Jane Eyre showed up and said, what if I did all of that at one time? And so it's like Gothic and domestic, it is romantic, and it is political, and it is morally serious, but it is kind of emotionally bold and wild. As a romance, this does mark a shift away from like the drawing room manners and witticisms of Austen and into a more like psychological and emotionally turbulent realm. It gives us a blueprint for a new kind of heroine, and it introduces us to the brooding, damaged hero. So,
what an introduction.
So if Pamela is a heroine of virtue and survival, and Elizabeth Bennet is a heroine of like wit and perception, then we get Jane Eyre now, and she is a heroine who is like also principled, but she has a lot of fire as well. So it kind of combines what we've already seen. Pamela uses her chastity as leverage in a world where a woman's only power is saying no until she gets a proposal. Elizabeth challenges a man's pride with her intelligence and self-respect, and Jane demands equality, not just in love, but in spirit. And she's willing to walk away entirely if she doesn't get it. So again, we're seeing the progression also of like the main heroine's sort of like autonomy. And so if Mr. B teaches us that a woman's virtue can redeem, quote unquote, a man, Mr. Darcy teaches us that the pride must be tempered by humility, and Mr. Rochester Rochester teaches us that love without honesty is just another form of control. So Pamela and Mr. B are cautionary tales wrapped in a wedding, and we have Elizabeth and Darcy that fall in love across ballroom floors and misunderstandings. And now we have Jane and Rochester who fall in love through loneliness and secrets and spiritual longing. So each story gives us a different kind of heroine and a different kind of happy ending.
Wow, that was so good.
Wow, that was amazing.
I was like so enraptured. I was like, yeah, that is right. So that is where we are in history. Now, there are probably people listening to this podcast who maybe are like us and have never read Jane Eyre before. So I want them to have a little bit of context for what we're talking about in this podcast, especially if they, since they haven't read it, so they know where we're coming from and what this story is about. So, Niah, if you would please give us a brief plot summary of Jane Eyre and what this book entailed.
Brief. Okay, so I didn't hear brief when I wrote this. Okay,
Whatever feels good for you.
I didn't hear brief. Okay, so start with that. All right, picture this. Jane is an orphan living with her aunt who despises her and seems to make it her mission to just make sure that no one in the house treats Jane well. One day, Jane is locked in a room where she thinks that she sees the ghost of her uncle, and that just sends her deeply into hysterics. So much so that her aunt is forced to call a doctor. When the doctor comes, he's able to pick up on the fact that Jane is being severely abused and is having a horrible time in this house, even though Jane really struggles to articulate this because she's I think 7 or 8 at the time that this happens. Because of this, he suggests sending her to a boarding school, and Jane's aunt agrees to this, mostly just to get her out of her hair, because her aunt truly despises her and resents the fact that Jane has been forced upon her, essentially. The boarding school that Jane goes to is called Lowood, and it is awful. It is disgusting. The food is bad, the buildings are freezing, the teachers are mean, and all of the rules that they have to follow are nonsensical because the guy that is in charge of the boarding house is an idiot, actually. Yeah. There really are not a lot of good things that happen to Jane while she is at the boarding school, but she does manage to meet 2 people who really changed the trajectory of her life. The first person that she meets is Helen Burns, and she is a calm, sweet, wonderful girl who is probably the first person in Jane's life to really make her feel loved. She is also the first person to break Jane's heart because, unfortunately, Helen dies in Jane's arms, which was not what I was expecting when I started reading this book. Actually, it is really upsetting. Jane also forms a relationship with one of her teachers, Miss Temple, which is one of the reasons that Jane decides that she wants to actually become a teacher at Lowood. Thankfully, by the time Jane is old enough to be a teacher, Lowood has changed for the better. But after teaching there for a while, Jane really feels like she is ready for a change and manages to go on to find a job as a governess. When she leaves Lowood and journeys into the country, she goes to Thornwood Hall, which is a huge and hulking manor house, and she finds it a little depressing and overwhelming at first. But her pupil is Adele, who is a super energetic French girl who is just so sweet and nice. But unfortunately, she is also French, so she is deeply flawed and in need of a lot of direction and tutelage.
Sorry to the French people
sorry
who
to
are
the French.
listening.
This is just a fact. This is just a fact, okay? And this is what happened in the book. All right,
Someone listening to this podcast was just like, "Mon Dieu."
Well, the next line is to overcome her French sensibilities, which was my favorite line from the book, where it was at the end it was eventually Adele was able to grow up enough to overcome her French sensibilities. And I Googled it because I was like, is that a disease? No, they hate the French. Did not like the French.
They did not like the French.
I hope I don't catch it, those French sensibilities.
I said, what context am I missing? No context. They're just mean. Jane has heard a lot about Adele's mysterious guardian, Mr. Rochester. But even after months of working with her, she still hasn't met him. One day, when Jane is out walking the moors into town, she stumbles upon a man who has fallen off his horse. Despite her attempts to help this gruff, rude, but somewhat magnetic man, he declines her help, so she goes on her way. But later that day, she finds out that that man was none other than Mr. Rochester himself. Who would have guessed? Who would have thought? He and Jane start spending quite a lot of time together, and it turns out that they match each other's freak. One night.
It's so true.
that is what it comes down to. They match each other's freaks so much. Their first interaction when they're talking back and forth, I'm like, oh no, she's into it. I was
yes, immediately. He's like, the fairies, and she's like, there are no green men. And I was like,
the bat. And I was like, how are these two going to get along? What's going on? And it's like, oh no, they are locked. Like, they're like this. They spend a lot of time together. They like really get to know one another. And like one night, Jane is woken up because she hears something outside of her door. We don't know what it is. This is a dark, mysterious manner, and it's creepy AF. We're going to say that. And Jane feels the same way. So she gets up, of course, to explore what's going on outside. And she finds that Mr. Rochester's room is on fire. She puts out the fire and like saves his life, which brings them even closer together because, of course, that's the most romantic thing ever. Like someone broke you up in a bed and saved your life.
Someone from the fire.
So I mean, how can you get over that? So he tells her, though, he says, don't worry about this. He doesn't explain anything, does not really seem concerned that someone tried to end his life. And Jane, she does not push him. She just accepts him. And
it's like, oh, this house just sets on fire sometimes. And that's okay.
And that's okay. But do you know what? That is actually a lot of the book. So she just accepts him, and that's just how the book goes on for a while. Something weird happens, and then like he like dresses up like a fortune teller, and sneaks into his own house. He like asks her to help him care for a man who has obviously been viciously attacked, is like at the end of his life basically. And Jane just kind of goes, okay, like I got you, like I'm here. Like she is a ride or die for real like and she is down bad for this man. And so she's locked in, she's in it. But she is so in love with him, but she is really convinced that he is not going to marry her. She thinks that he is going to marry someone else. But eventually he professes his love to her and he begs her to marry him. Jane is shocked, but she agrees. And they start planning their wedding, and they are blissfully in love for a number of days.
Entire days.
Which in the scheme of things, you take what you can get. Of course, all good things come to an end, unless that is Rochester's first marriage, because that hasn't ended.
Surprise, shorty.
Surprise. Turns out he is still actively married. I mean, actively married. And to Jane's dismay, she finds this out in the middle of her wedding. Not the most ideal time to find out that your husband to be is married. Literally any other time would have been better. He has a wife named Bertha.
Now you're going to insult people named Bertha?
Listen, it's not. Bertha's a fine name. Bertha is a great name. It sounds
French to me. It sounds like a French name.
It's just that we've got Jane, we've got Adele, we've got like all these other names, and then we have Bertha.
Yes.
And I'm like I did not know that was a name of the time. I'll say that. And that's why. No offense to any Berthas or any French Berthas or any Berthas who have gone to France.
Covering all your bases.
All my bases. I got this. Okay, please. But he decides that he wants to introduce her to his wife, who has been locked away in an attic for years because she's mentally ill and a danger to herself and others. For reasons that are still a mystery to me, he takes her to see the wife, and that goes as well as one would expect, which is to say not well at all. Despite this, Jane still really loves him. I mean, of course she does. But she knows she can't stay married to him since, he is married already. Mm-hmm. So she leaves in the middle of the night with not much more than the clothes on her back. Jane wanders around for a few days, barely surviving until she collapses outside of a house. Thankfully, the people inside take her in and nurse her back to health. Once Jane has recovered, she gets a job as a school teacher in a nearby town, and for the first time ever, Jane has what she has always wanted and has been long overdue for: a simple, peaceful life, which ends abruptly because of a man. Well, no, but she ends up being really close to the three people who helped nurse her back to health, and she finds out that those three are actually her long-lost cousins, and that she has suddenly inherited enough money to make her independently wealthy. We love a girl boss.
The dream.
Yes. Then, as usual, a man makes it weird. Her male cousin starts trying to groom her and convince her that God really, 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 really wants them to get married and move to India to become missionaries, which kind of a hard pitch. Like, God wants that? Do you even like me? But no.
And she asks
that. Yeah. She's like, do you even like me? And he says, no, absolutely not. That doesn't have anything to do with this. Why would you even think that I would ask you to marry me because I like you? And despite that, really great offer of a loveless marriage, she says no. And one night she is sleeping and wrestling with the decisions that she has made, and she has a really vivid dream where she hears the love of her life calling her name. She wakes up and knows that she has to go back and find Rochester. So she goes back to Thornfield. To her dismay, it is burned to the ground, and she finds out that Bertha set the fire and unfortunately died in the fire. And Rochester was gravely injured trying to save her. She manages to find him again and nurse him back to health, since he is still recovering from his injuries and is suffering from depression and being heartsick over losing her. They realize that they still love each other and are quietly married, and the story ends happily ever after, with Jane finally having love, security, and a life she chose for herself.
Aww.
That was it.
So beautiful. Yes.
I love this book.
Perfect. I'm so glad.
I'm so happy.
Thank you for that.
Sorry. I'm sorry it was so long.
No, that was wonderful, and I feel like we are fully prepared now to jump in. So something we didn't really do last time, which I think I kind of skipped over because I just had this assumption that we all loved Pride and Prejudice. But with this book, especially since it's all of our first times reading it, I'm curious, just like top level, what are your overall thoughts? And most importantly, kind of what I'm going for here is like, what did you rate this book out of 5? Like finishing it, did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it a 5-star? Was it a 1-star? And we're going to start with Lizzy.
Overall, I've rated it 4 stars.
Yeah.
I think Jane is a brilliant character, and I loved being alongside her with that journey. I've never read a character like her, so I loved that, but just by vibes, it's not a top favorite, but I think it's just such an incredible book. I'll find thoughts on it.
Mari.
And this is a 5-star read for me. I think that it is so brilliantly crafted. The language is beautiful. Jane is like a top tier, best of all time sort of heroine. And I think that love it or hate it when it comes to like the romance and the relationship, there's just so many interesting dynamics here. So much to think about, so much to like really, I don't know, contend with. And like, I think it is like a classic that really, really earns its keep and that has staying power. And rereading it for this podcast, I was like sobbing my way through it. Like I just have such an emotional connection to this, and there were so many moments where I like thought of teen Maddie reading this and like why she got so attached to it, and like I don't know, kind of thinking of teen Maddie made me so emotional. So it was like a really good reading experience, even though it was like all over again. I found new things to kind of pick out here as well.
Oh, I love that. Niah, you just said you love this book, so expound.
So like a 2.5, I think. It's probably a 5-star read because I loved reading this book. I love the experience of reading this book. I love the way that the book was written. There are definitely things that I can look at in terms of like the story and in terms of like just some of the frustrations that I had with some of the actions of the characters, particularly all of the male characters, but I think that, it's just a sign of the times. But overall, I had a really great experience reading the book, and I loved it. I truly did. Just overall, I teared up, like literally being like, and then Helen died, like reading the summary. I teared up just thinking about how much I felt like while I was reading the book. I don't think that I've ever read a book where like from the very first page, I managed to feel like the characters felt so real. Like Jane felt so real in the way that this was written, that to me, that's just so unique. I read so many books, and I've read so many books, of course, but the way that like her voice is so distinct and so real, there's absolutely no way I could not give this book 5 stars based on that alone, despite all of the, thoughts that I have about like some of the actions and things like that. So yeah, I love this book for sure.
This makes me so happy.
I think I actually ended up giving it a 4 out of 5, but it's interesting because I'm sitting here thinking about it as you guys talk about it, and I said this multiple times while I was reading it. I said to different people, I think I said on Threads, that I think it is probably my favorite classic that I've ever read. It just was such a fun book to read, I feel like, even though it is sad and it has its moments. I think because all of us read so much, and my history, like education-wise, is in like film and film theory, and it's very hard to surprise me. Like, I feel like I can sit down with a book and I can pretty much like plot it out from the beginning and kind of have a good idea what's going to happen. But this book frequently surprised me to the point of like, what? Like, I could not believe some of the twists in this book because they were so absolutely unhinged.
Yeah.
And that made the reading of this really fun to me. And I also found, I loved Pride and Prejudice, and I gave Pride and Prejudice a 5 out of 5, but I do think this is an easier read. Like, Pride and Prejudice, the language is just a little more old school. It's a more challenging read in 2025, and it's still an excellent book, but it's a book that, the language just, it makes it, to me, a little bit more challenging read. This, to me, felt like a much easier read. Like, the language language did not feel as dated to me as Pride and Prejudice. And I think it would be a 5 out of 5, except the men in this book just like grated on my ever-loving nerves so often that I was like, oh my God, you're stressing me out. At least in other books, I feel like there's at least like one fallback man that you can be like, okay, well, at least he's not stressing me out. But every man in this book was stressing me out to like the top. And so I think that is maybe why it didn't get a 5 out of 5. But I do think it is the most fun I've ever had reading a classic, which I think is really, really special.
I feel like if content-wise, if I was just rating it off of like the story and the like content-wise, I'd be like, okay, I'd probably do a 4, like 4.5. But like literally like the content, the experience of reading it, the fact that I very rarely get surprised at things that happen in books. Like I can count on one hand, like this year, out of like the 100+ books that I've read where I was like, oh, I'm surprised by that happened. It's one, and it's this one.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I didn't know that.
When you guys told me you had never read it and didn't know anything about it, I just thought, The Wife in the Attic, I cannot wait. Like, that is...
I have a very visceral image in my head of what that scene looks like, and I'm pretty sure it's offensive. And, like, when it happened, it was horror movie level, like, rah! Like, her, like, Frankenstein monstering out of there. And I was like, this is bonkers bananas that this is happening right now. Like, I was not prepared.
I think it's really interesting that you mention like the readability or the difference in the writing between like this and Pride and Prejudice, because there is not that much of a gap between when these books were written.
Yeah. That's only like 34 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
it's very interesting.
Part of it is that there is sort of the language in Pride and Prejudice is like they're not rich people, but they are upper class people. And there is a way that like that comes through in the way that Austen has written this and like the way that they speak to each other. And I think that those like 30 odd years that like span these two books are also years that like a lot of progress has happened, right? There's a lot of industrialization. There's a lot of like, you know, I said about like the working class kind of becoming a little bit more class conscious. And this is a book from a woman who was like a poor woman, educated woman who was like working in these spheres, who again, she's educated, but she's also like lived a very different life than we see Lizzy has lived. So I think that that's part of it. I also think it's interesting to talk about this as more readable because I feel like this is very dense in description, which is a thing that I feel like a lot of readers might like run up against, because she's going to tell you what color the curtain is. She's going to tell you the dream she had last night. She's going to describe the manner. I love that shit. I'm like, yes, give me the fog on the moors. Like, tell me everything. But I know that that is a thing that when people read classics, they might kind of run up against. I think it is also very easy to like kind of skim through those things and like get to the meat of the plot and the dialogue and the action. But if you are somebody who does enjoy like a very descriptive and sort of atmospheric novel, like nobody really does it. Like Charlotte, cannot be beat with Bronte.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked it. And I'm curious, Mari, what your reaction will be to this, because the writer that I constantly kept sort of connecting this book with that atmospheric feel was actually V.E. Schwab, which I thought was interesting. Like, I got a lot of the same kind of vibes that I get from reading V.E. Schwab's work from this, which is a lot of like vibes and atmosphere, and not as, I mean, when there was plot, like it was happening, but there was a lot of moments where it was just like a lot of long stretches in the book that were just atmospheric, which I thought was interesting.
It's actually like she picked the wildest plot point to make up for like having more. She was like, well, what's the wildest thing I can do now to make up? You want a plot? I'll give you plot.
And never complain again. I don't disagree with the Schwab. I don't like V.E. Schwab's work, like in general, but I don't disagree because like one of my sort of complaints about a lot of Schwab's work is that like she spends so much time in the setting and describing the setting and like in the background, and also, but she like never gets around to the plot. And I also think that like her characters could like not hold a candle to like these characters in terms of being really well thought out and built. But in terms of like the vibe and like the sort of navel-gazy atmosphere of it all, like, yes, I understand the comparison.
Or like Erin Morgenstern would be another.
I
would compare the two of them a lot too, for
the
sure.
Night Circus is
Night Circus or
Starless Sea.
Starless Sea, thank you. Yeah, for sure. So obviously part of this podcast is, we've kind of already touched on this a little bit, is that we're looking at the history of romance and the romance genre. And so we're not just reading these books, you know, in a vacuum, we're reading them in the context of this timeline. So what do you think Jane Eyre brings to this genre that we still see in the romance genre today? Like, what in this book has stood the test of time?
Men ruining things.
Tormented man.
Yeah, this is our brooding hero. I mean, it's really interesting to see the jump from Darcy to Rochester, because Darcy is like prickly, right? There's like an almost brood to Darcy, but he's still like a good man.
He's a good.
So Lizzy and I were actually together recently. We went on a little summer vacation, and I talked her ear off about Jane Eyre the entire time, and we also forced her to watch 2 Jane Eyre adaptations, 2 of them. Like,
I didn't watch it. I need to watch one.
And something while we were watching the adaptations that I commented on is that all of the Jane Eyre adaptations have kissing in them. Like Jane and Rochester kiss. You're not getting a hand flex scene, right? It is like full on kissing and very affectionate. So I was thinking about like why interpretations of the adaptations are like that. And I'm like, oh, because Rochester be fucking. Like, Rochester is fucking. Right? Darcy, I don't know, maybe he's done it like once or something, but Rochester's fucking. And
What is the question? Remind me of the question.
Wait, I'm coming back around to it.
Okay.
So this is like definitely a different type of hero than Darcy. Darcy was like prickly, but he was still very much the gentleman. Rochester is like completely the broken.
He's the rake.
Yeah, he's the rake. He's the brooding hero. He's like, I hate everybody but you sort of energy is starting to boil there. Like things that we see in modern romance, I think really have a direct line back to Rochester.
I always kind of thought of Darcy as being kind of the origin of that like brooding, like quiet brooding love interest, but he doesn't hold a candle to Rochester. Like reading them now, I'm like, oh, you know, we talked about this last time. Darcy, to me, he's not like a brooding man. He's an autistic man. Like Rochester,
awkward little, yeah,
like Rochester is a brooding man. Like, and he's got a lot going on. Lizzy,
Maybe
any thoughts of? Oh no, either one of you, Lizzy or Niah. Any thoughts of other things from this book that have stood the test of time?
I like her saving him, like one of them being like in danger and the other person like swooping in to save them, and then they brush hands and they're just like, oh my god, you could have, like that sort of thing. I mean, it's gonna do it for me every time. I also feel like it's something that like happens in a lot of, well, at least a lot of the books that I read, but maybe that's saying more about me than it is about the romance genre, actually.
Something I kind of love that I don't know if it's actually said in the book, but there's one conversation they have where she's like, I'm meeting you as an equal spiritually or something, which was kind of giving the like, I will find you in any lifetime. It felt very like, we'll stand the test of time kind of thing. So I did enjoy that. Also just whatever the connection was when they heard each other.
Yes. It feels very mated, like like soulmate sort of thing, which is not something we've really seen. We've seen like, you know, people fall in love or whatnot with Pamela. Sorry, that was for Pamela. But this felt like, especially from Rochester, right? He talks about like there's a string like attached to my heart and it's attached to your heart. Like you call to me. Like there's this very sense of like soulmates here that I think is also something that we see a lot kind of carrying out through romance.
Yeah.
Can I say something controversial?
Oh wait, yes.
Yes, but be brave.
But I'm gonna be brave. I know that this is technically a romance. I wish it wasn't. I actually wish it wasn't. I wish that she didn't fall in love with anyone. I wish that she just got to love herself and love her life. Because like my least favorite thing about this is the romance. It is my least favorite thing. Like, I don't know. I think if she had come back and he was on his deathbed and he was like, hey, I'm sorry for all that. You want to be Adele's like guardian? And then she raised her and they had a wonderful life and they like went around the world. That would have been perfect for me. I feel like my least favorite part about this was the romance. Like the more I think about it.
You wanted
it was romantic, but I
wanted
just,
a woman to end up without the man? What?
No,
money
like I know
again.
that's so weird, but I feel like that's like I don't know. I really love romance. I think I might read more romance than like maybe I read more romance than any of you, but like I didn't love it because it was a romance. Like that was actually like I don't know. That's so weird. I'll pray on that.
Can I say something?
No, I feel that.
Yeah.
The end is actually kind of my favorite part when she goes off and finds family and then she comes into money and she's developing that life that she wants. That I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more star-crossed lovers. I was like, I kind of like the impact they had on each other's life, but I didn't really care whether they got together in the end or not.
I wish it had ended like that. Sorry.
Here's my thing is, and this is controversial for me because I will actually kind of defend this romance. And I know that's a bad man. I know that's a bad man. But here, okay, if we're thinking about a scale of our question of, is this romance? Pamela was a horror, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice is like pretty universally agreed upon for the ages romance, right? That's like a pretty clear, those people are happy. They spend the rest of their days together. I feel like for me, Jane Eyre is somewhere in the middle of both of those things, where I end up being like, if you like it, I love it. If you like it, I love it. If that's what Jane wants, and I love Jane so much, I want her to have what she wants. And the reason that I think that it is okay by the time that we get to the end is that is a bad man, and the story acknowledges that is a bad man who did a bad thing and punishes the hell out of him.
Yeah,
right.
that's
Punishes
true.
the hell out of him for the things that he did, and then it sends its heroine off to go get independent, to get wealthy, to get family, and to be and become her own person, and then go, you know what? I still want that man. And make
And
that
she can have
decision.
whatever she wants.
And she can have whatever she wants. And she goes and she finds herself a man who is like groveling at her feet and like apologetic, punished, realizes the error of his ways, and still rich as hell, baby. Like,
I want to amend what I said. Okay. My favorite part about this was that Jane fell in love with herself by the end of the book.
Yes.
That is the romance that I loved and that I feel like trumped everything else in the book. And that's all I needed in this book. The fact that she got to choose the bad rich man at the end, that is icing on the cake. There we go. I love that journey for her. And I loved how complex and deeply flawed all of these characters were and how they did not shy away from that. And every single one of these people were weirdos. Every single one of them were just kind of not weird. Yeah, actually, no, they were kind of weird. They were kind of oh, I don't fit, on the fringes of society in some way. And they were looking for ways to connect with other people. And then they found their people. And at least Jane found a way to make peace with herself and find happiness. And I love that so much. Don't really care about that man, but love her. And
Jane's happy.
Yeah, Jane's happy. Thank you, Murray. Thank you for that. That was a good...
thanks.
This is our first Gothic romance. And Mara, you kind of mentioned earlier that, romance at this point kind of starts to split into these little subgenres, which is very interesting. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as we continue on with this. Gothic romance is still very much a thing, right? Here in 2025, people are still very drawn to Gothic romance over traditional romance. What are the things to you that define Gothic romance? What sets Gothic romance like this apart from traditional romance? And also, if you want to talk on this as well, why do people gravitate more towards Gothic romance than traditional romance when people are fans of this subgenre?
That's a great question.
It's a great question.
That's a fantastic question, Jaysen. So good. Legitimately. It just sounds like I'm being sarcastic. That was such a good question. I am really excited for the answer. I'm gonna shut up now.
Lizzy.
Wait, okay. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
The world is scary, and it's
let's
nice
start
that
here.
you can... Yeah.
What do you think it is about Gothic romance that draws people to it over traditional romance?
Ooh. Other than the atmospheric aspect of it, I'm actually going to very poorly bring in Charlotte Bronte's take because she's not a fan of Jane Austen. She didn't she doesn't believe she's one of the greats. There's a lot of
Which is
in-depth,
crazy because she
was a
wrote her
bigger fan.
biography. So it's wild that she doesn't like her when she wrote her
I was
biography.
what?
Are you beefing with the person whose
The
life
jokes
you...
came back around and I had already forgotten it.
No, but please, Lizzy, go on.
She was describing Austen as kind of this very well-kept garden. She describes her as, I think, a sensible lady, but an insensible woman. And that Pride and Prejudice is... Yeah, there's some... I actually encourage you to look it up because what she says is kind of hilarious. But comparing Pride and Prejudice to this, she was saying that Pride and Prejudice sort of lacks the passion and depth where she brought the melodrama that people actually encouraged her to take out of Jane Eyre. And she was like, no, I want the melodrama. And that's what I liked about the Gothic romance, that it didn't necessarily... I mean, Pride and Prejudice is very complex, but it wasn't as neat, to use her words for that. There were very, very messy characters, and she didn't shy away from that.
I think it's interesting. That's interesting because these are two different points of view on love, right? Jane Austen was very sort of purposeful in the way that she put sort of love in these boxes. And she talks a lot about violent love, right? And she makes fun a lot of people falling in love over poetry and over dance floors, right? She thinks it's almost this ridiculous thing, or at least she's kind of pulling apart this idea of violent love, of big emotions, especially because the whole thing that she's talking about is that who cares when like your security is marriage. You're gonna starve, find a man, like is kind of the position that she's working from. And so she gives us at the end this romance, right? These two people who do find a love match. But Jane Austen throughout Pride and Prejudice is talking about like really taking a good look at if there is such a thing as sort of like violent emotional love. And here comes Charlotte Bronte. And one of the things that I love about Jane is that she could read more Pamela-like, where Pamela's like, I'm perfect and I'm so godly. Because Jane is like a very good character, but she's also very flawed. And like the thing that we learn very soon that her aunt clocks is that like she's like, I'm not a liar. And her aunt's like, fine, you're not a liar, but your flaw is that you are emotional. You're dramatic. Jane is the drama. Like constantly, everything she feels, she tries to keep like very under wraps in terms of like her religion and her responsibilities, but she does have big emotions. So they're two very different looks at love, which I think is interesting because we're talking about like pulling more towards like Gothic novels, but we actually did not like this romance as much as like the quiet, contained, like sure, these people had big emotions. He had a wife in the attic. so
there has to be a happy medium.
there has somewhere.
It sounds like symbolic of something, like, oh, they've got a wife in the attic, but no, he had a real
Literally.
wife in a real attic. It's crazy.
Yes.
The other thing I think is really interesting about this book that I feel like is quite controversial, I feel like it gets talked about a lot in books today when it happens, is the fact that this is very much an age gap romance, right? Like the manic laughter.
Okay. Can we? So I'm going to say this.
Yeah, please.
I can't think about that actually. Like I actively was like, no. I was like, no, they're 5 years. That's fine. This
No.
yep,
Flirting in my
I
head.
couldn't do it. I couldn't
Yes.
do it. I read it 3 times. I was like, no, surely. Oh, well.
Yeah.
I mean, when I wrote this question and I wrote, like, how do we feel knowing Jane is 19 while Rochester is in his 40s? I double-checked those numbers on multiple websites to make sure I wasn't, like, misreading or miscalculating. But if that were in a book today, in a like, it's fine if he's 1,000-year-old, vampire or ferryman or whatever. But when it's like 30 years, it's very upsetting, right? Or 20 years, right? 20 years. But yeah, did that weigh on how you felt about these characters? Do you think maybe it's intentional because of the way that power dynamics are really played around with in this book?
I feel like it's intentional because it feels like everything in this book is intentional. It feels like it's very carefully like crafted and very like all of the decisions were made like specifically to evoke emotions in the reader. I mean, I know I said I was like, oh, I blocked that out, but I thought about that a lot when Jane would come and like help him do something. He'd be like, oh no, forget it, it's fine. And how this older man that this girl is very obsessed with, no, everything is okay. And like I just felt like his age had a lot to do with why their interactions ended the way that they did, where she just kind of backed off and like let go, especially because she's coming from when she was living with her aunt. She came in and she had a really hard time expressing herself to the doctor. Like the doctor is the one that really plucked her up out of that world. And then her other interactions with men, it was the head of the like boarding school who was just like a really terrible man, and she was never able to like actually speak up for herself or go against anything that he said. And I don't think she actually had a lot of other male figures in her life, if I remember correctly. And I think that a lot of that had to do with her meeting this man and falling in love with this man and not questioning a lot of the things that he said and told her and made her feel. I think it had a lot to do with it. I think it was really intentional.
I think that, again, yes, intentional, because a big sort of theme around Jane and Rochester is like innocence and decay, right? She doesn't see herself
so much better than I did. Jeez. Gosh.
Stop.
I love your brain.
All I heard was Mari calling a 40-year-old man decaying, and I was like, well, that's harsh.
Not because of the age, but because, I mean, like,
his whole heart.
It's of his heart, because it's black and withered. And she hasn't experienced anything outside of, like, Lowood, right? And she's coming into this world, which I think actually makes the romance even worse, is that, like, this is the first man that she's encountering. And you see that a lot in their interactions, I feel like, where it's like, do you love this man, or is this the first man you can love?
Nice.
Like, you know, that is, like, available. There's a way that she's impressionable because of that. But, like, thematic, right? He talks so much about, like, she is who he could have been. He was a good person once. And she like represents to him everything that he lost because he was cheated out of it. He feels like life has cheated him. And because life has cheated him, he turned to like, well, I'm going to have fun. And he just became this like rake and this reprobate, right? And so like he is like the opposite of what Jane is. And so we also see the author sort of representing that in their ages, this like freshly 18-year-old schoolgirl and this 37, 38-year-old man who has seen the world, which would have been less shocking for the people reading it at that time. Because again, it's like the angel in the house. She was young and pious and quiet. And, you know, that was the prize woman versus like the man who was established and had wealth. And that was like the connection. But for us reading it now, we're like, even worse.
He does talk about how, oh, I could have been good. I used to be good, and now was he good? Like, did he used to be good? Does the text support that claim?
I don't think that we, I think
well, that's what I mean. I'm asking, like, for real. Like, I don't remember like him actually like talking about anything that would actually suggest that he did anything like good. He seems like he went and accepted the arranged marriage that his family had like set up for him, and then he like got there and he was like, a day later, I didn't like her, and so I stuffed her in an attic, but I waited 48 hours, you know.
No.
And it's like
I don't know if that's the exact.
I think it
course of
maybe
events.
no, I'm reading it. No, I'm that's
It happens.
no.
What is the return policy on his wife?
I think that we don't see directly like what, like, I don't know, we don't have flashbacks or anything like
Right.
that, but we do get the impression from the maid and from him that he views himself as at least like as good as Jane because he also did his duty, right? He was the youngest son who was expected to do something to help the family and increase their fortune. And so when his brother and his father like was like, you're gonna get married to this woman you've never met before, don't worry about it, don't ask any questions, he accepted his duty. He was like, sure, that is what I'm supposed to do as a youngest son. He like got married, and then the next day that like lady was trying to rip his eyes out, and he was like, what have I done? And so I mean, not the next day, but she like
2 days.
they lived together.
hours.
They lived together happily in marriage, I think, for a time, and then her
Yeah.
mental health was like
Declining.
decaying and declining, and nobody told him that this was something that ran through the family. And so like he felt like he got cheated in that way, but he's like, I did my duty, I did the right, and he still thinks he's doing the right thing by not putting her in an asylum where they would treat her poorly. And that woman was trying to set him on fire, and he was like, it's okay, I'll keep her, like, that's my wife.
My wife. That's my wife. Well, we found another one. We found another origin story.
So he thinks he's still doing the right thing at great personal cost to himself. So he thinks he's a man of duty.
It's so interesting too that you mentioned that like his family said, okay, you're going to marry this woman, and he said, okay, like don't ask any questions, and he said, okay, I'm not going to ask any questions, I'm going to go do it. And then that didn't turn out very well for him, but he has the same expectations of like Jane, and they go through that same cycle where he goes, okay, do this thing, don't ask any questions, it's going to be okay, and then it's not okay, and he's like, what? It didn't work last time for me, and now this like doesn't, this ignorance, this like, you know, didn't work for you?
I think more than like shock, I don't think that he was shocked that it didn't work. I think the entire time he's fighting against knowing that this is the wrong thing to do. And like knowing like all of the little games he's playing, like the push and pull with Jane. He knows that this is not good when he's like running to go get married because he just knows he's got to say I do before something happens, right? He knows that this is wrong, and he like made that promise to himself that he would reveal it to her, but not until after they were married. So he knows that there's like a ticking time bomb here. He thinks that he's owed this from this like one thing from the universe, and the universe is like, haha, you thought.
Because this man is my least favorite part of the book, but I love talking about him. I actually had to look up the author's intentions with him because I was seeing how I was interpreting him, but I wanted to know what she meant to do with him. And in letters, she was describing him as this incredibly passionate, not selfish, not self-indulgent man. And so me as like a reader now, that's what's so interesting about the book is the discussions around it. Me with a completely different lived experience. I was like, all I see is a man kind of living through selfish actions and what he thinks he's entitled to, like you said. So as I was reading it, my first instinct with the age gap was the author was in love with a married man, and she was.
And did you What did you find in your
she
research?
sent him letters. He was like sort of like a principal figure of the school she worked at, or a student. I don't know. She was young. He was married, and I think someone in his family kept the letters because he tore them up and used them as scrap paper.
Not
Just
even,
like a
he didn't even
man.
throw them away. He used them as scrap paper.
No, scribbles were on it, like other pencil marks, and he ripped it up, and someone like meticulously put it back together and donated it to a
Oh
museum.
my god!
And those were the first Post-it notes.
No, I imagine.
That's
Oh
factual.
my god! Imagine how. I imagine I would come back from the dead to haunt. I would like if I woke up and I found out, and then imagine they're talking about this like how many years after I'm passed, and they're saying your love was so unwanted, and like he wrote he wrote on the scrap
didn't
paper
care.
of your love letters.
Yeah, or at least we don't know his replies because she obviously had a reason to keep sending him letters. We don't know what he said, but overall, you can kind of get the vibe that he didn't care. So reading it, I had this different. It felt like she was living like if Jane's happy, I'm happy. It felt like the author was kind of getting to complete the fantasy of being in love with a married man.
Oh,
I'm very
wow.
sad. That actually is.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Maybe she ripped up his letters and used them as Post-its too. Check her fridge. Maybe they're
Maybe
on the
she
fridge.
ripped up his letters and wrote a classic that we're still talking about today on them.
Okay. All right.
Bitch,
All right.
Justice.
I was like, I was shriveling inside, so I did need that. Thank you. Some perspective.
You're welcome.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Wow.
I have a couple last questions here, and then we'll wrap up. We have to talk about the big plot twist with Rochester's wife. We've talked about it a lot, but I just need to hear your initial reactions when this happened in this book. What ran through your heads? Like, give me a replay. Give me a scene by scene replay.
Is it bad? Mine was relief because I thought it was something worse.
What? What could be worse?
When
A
we
ghost?
were watching
A
the
demon?
movie, I literally leaned over to Muddy and I was like, I thought it was his kid. I thought he was hiding a kid from an illegitimate marriage or something. Because I've watched too many
Pamela?
like crime shows growing up where
Right.
that was just like a thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's completely horrific because then I moved on to the horror scene that Jane was describing of this woman, like practically like the state that they find her in, you know? And then it was just like horrified.
Yeah, I just imagine you reading it being like, oh, thank God, it's just his wife. Like,
Just a
what?
secret wife.
It's just his secret wife. Could have been so much worse.
Jason,
Right.
what was your reaction? You said,
Oh my
you were in
God.
the group chat. Your jaw was like,
Yeah.
and I
My
was
jaw
like,
was on
I was
the
like,
floor.
what is he talking about? I was like, what's going on?
Because I don't know, it kind of was giving like ghost vibes, like there's
Yes.
something ghosty in the house. Then I thought maybe there was like an animal or something, or like, you know, they kind of at one point when that guy who comes along, and I think he's the one that interrupts the marriage, he gets injured, and it makes it seem like
The
like
brother,
a wolf
yeah.
ate him or something, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like some sort of feral dog or something. But then when they interrupted the wedding and they're like, oh, he's still married, I thought, what was the girl who was like the maid servant who Jane kept seeing?
Grace
I couldn't
Poole.
catch a break.
Yeah.
The way
Right,
she
I thought
talked about
she was the ex-wife.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when they found the ex-wife in the attic, I was like, what? Like, nothing could have
my
prepared me.
God.
Nothing. Nothing in this earth could have prepared me for that.
My jaw was on the floor.
Oh my
I think
god.
it's so smart to like, because it is Gothic and you are like constantly hearing about not only the ghosts, right? It's this like Manor, the ghost or whatever. You have Grace Poole as a red herring, but she's also like, I don't know, having all these dreams, and she's like the veil got ripped and like the fire, and so like there's so many different elements that you're being pulled away, like your attention. So it like
Yeah.
it is that moment where like a wife in the attic is horrifying, and also like the
Not
like
the wildest thing
not
it could
the
have been.
wildest explanation that it could have been at that moment.
Yeah.
So you're like double shocked in a way that you're like, oh, a wife in an attic, and oh my god, a wife in the attic at the same time.
Like, have you guys seen the movie Barbarian? Like, to me, it's a horror movie, and it's really freaky, and it's one of those movies where, like, really cannot predict what's going to happen because it just keeps getting more and more unhinged and wild. The director's new movie, Weapons, just came out, and we haven't
Okay.
seen that yet, but it's supposed to be kind of similar. But, like, that is what that reminded me of. Like, and my brain made it so much worse and more unhinged than it was. And so I think that was like, years from now, a lot of this book will fall away in my memory, but my memory of that scene will stay forever lodged in my brain because of what I envisioned. I was just jaw on the floor. I could not believe.
Do you guys know that there's also another book that is like wildly held as a classic as well? It's called Wild Sargasso Sea, and it is somebody who wrote from Bertha Mason's perspective from when she is young and in Jamaica. So it's like her portion of the story, and a lot of times people will study that book alongside Jane Eyre in school, or like, you know, in college they'll get to to Wide Sargasso Sea. I've never read it. I've actually kind of been scared to read it for how the way it might change my relationship to Jane Eyre, because I love Jane Eyre as well, or so much, I should say. But I'm curious if any of you guys would be interested to like read about Bertha.
Somebody just mentioned it to me recently, and I think it's actually like, if it's the book I'm thinking about, it's actually like a little bit steamier than you might expect it to be. I think it's this book. I was talking to a friend recently who got recommended to read that book alongside Jane Eyre because she was doing a report about Jane Eyre in high school, and so she ended up watching the movie, and the movie was like very much R-rated, and she was like a high schooler, and she was like, what is happening? But the like teacher hadn't actually seen the movie, so they didn't know what they were recommending. But yeah, I'd be interested in reading that at some point for sure.
I would too. I don't think it's very long.
No, I don't think it is either.
Oh yeah, we should do a poll.
Can we have that or the next one we're doing? Like have an either or situation?
No. We're doing the next one. It's been decided. But we'll do a poll on the YouTube page of if we should check out Wild Sargasso Sea.
Maybe a bonus pod, a bonus episode.
Yeah, it's like a bonus episode. Yeah. We'll do a poll. Holiday episodes.
Merry Christmas and God bless you all.
Nothing says Christmas like a wife in the attic. Okay, so we're going to end on this question. How do you feel about the fact that the entire book is addressed to the reader? Especially the line, I think there's a line at the end that when I was doing research about this book and kind of forming questions about this book, a line that sticks out to a lot of people is, Reader, I married him, right? And I think it's such an interesting line because it's like, well, I did it. And it's also just, I think it acknowledges the reader almost as like a close friend a little bit. So, coming off of, we read a book that was like pretty much all letters, and then Pride and Prejudice, how do we feel about this book being kind of just like addressed to us?
I loved it.
I liked, it really solidified a lot of what I was feeling, where I was like, it felt like she was talking to me, like the entire time that I was reading it. And so then having that reader, I was like, like it was good. It was good.
Like she was taking me, because I said like one of my favorite parts is just going on a journey with Jane. Like Jane's that character, we could probably put her in just a random setting and I'd read it anyway. So the fact that she was taking us on that journey, also now realizing the parallels of Jane and Charlotte, it really did feel like I was a part of her life for a moment.
I agree. I think it's part of what makes Jane such a well-developed character is that we're in like she's addressing us, we're in her first person perspective, which is, we got Pamela's perspective through letters, so it was like choppy. We weren't really sort of in her head. And then with Jane Austen, we've got like now the bird's eye view narrator who's kind of addressing us sometimes, or like it feels that way with the humor. But this is the first time that we're reading something that it's like the main character is like really speaking to us. And I feel like this is the most well-developed main character that we've read so far, and that is certainly helped by the fact that it's like it is Jane telling us her story, right, with foresight, because even the stuff that she's telling us in her early life, she's like, and then she's got like this view of what has happened that helps us also understand it.
I really like that it makes it feel less like you're reading a story and it feels more like you're being told a story, right? Like feels like you're sitting down with somebody and they're just like recounting the tale of their life. And I think that also adds to that idea that I was talking about where it feels very readable. And I think that's because it feels very much like a conversation, which feels very approachable and like I haven't read a ton of classics, but of the classics I've read so far, I would say this is one of, if not the most approachable. And I think that is a big part of it, is because this author doesn't feel above us in any way. This author very much feels like they're on our level having a discussion with us, which adds to that accessibility factor. Any last thoughts on Jane Eyre before we close out this Jane Eyre-rific episode?
Oh, wow.
I have one thought, but it's not about Jane Eyre. It's about puns.
Jane-erific? All right.
Just a really good book. It was great.
Yeah, it was great. I think sometimes I don't want to read classics, or I don't think classics will mean as much to me today as they did when they were written. And it's even less about like, the groundbreakingness of it, or wow, this book really is like such a moment in history. It just was like a really fun book to read. Like it was like a really enjoyable read. It had great twists. It had great characters. Like it had everything you want from like a good book. And I think that was really special.
I just want to share a story with you guys. I was listening to this audiobook while I was trying to sew a shirt, and I got to the part where like Jane heard a noise outside of the door and my ceiling fan fell out of the ceiling, like literally fell out of the ceiling, And like at the time when she's like talking about like all this creepy shit happening, I have never been more scared in my entire life. Like, actually, it was the scariest thing to have like the fan coming down and then also listening to this book where I'm like, oh my God, like, so it's spooky, scary things happening. And then that happened. And I like ducked under my table so I wouldn't die from the ceiling fan. And David was like, what's going on up here? And I was like, listen to a book. And also the ceiling fan fell out of the ceiling.
Ghosts.
Yeah. So very unique reading experience for me. Good overall, though. Yeah.
I fully picture that you had that experience in the attic, and Dave, you said David was like, what's going on up here? And it's him checking on you in the attic.
Wife in the attic. It was on the second floor, so close to the attic.
Close to the attic.
I think that there's so much here to me that is very memorable. I think rereading it always reminds me how many of these scenes and moments stick with me. Jane as a character as a whole is, I think, very sticky, but there are so many things that I was like looking forward to reading. I think that the scene truly where she saves him from the fire and she's like, okay, good night, and he's like, you're just gonna leave me, and the tension between them at that moment where he's like, say goodbye to me, you saved my life, is so juicy. That scene is so memorable, and you have so many like that. The wedding, ridiculous as the fortune teller scene is, it lives in my mind rent free, right? That's always gonna live up here, where he's like dressed up and be like, show me your hand or whatever it was.
We didn't talk about that enough. I'm actually gonna say that we did not talk about that enough, because there were so many other things that happened in this book that we were just like, whoa, no, that was wild. We actually should have spent more time there.
The portrait that Jane draws to remind herself why she doesn't deserve Rochester, that punched me in the gut.
Oh man,
when
she's like Lady Ingram or something.
Yeah, Lady Ingram. Yeah. When she's up in the attic with like the man who has been mauled by something she does, and she's like freaking out because like she's alone up there. Like, there's so many moments. And then the first proposal when they're like fighting with each other and she's like, I am no bird. Like, this is like A+ lines, A+ moments, and they live in my head rent free. So I love this book.
Okay, my scene that we didn't talk about that we probably should have was just everything with Sanjin and his whole... God. I kind of skimmed over him, not reading wise, but in these questions, because he's not really the main focus, and also because he annoyed the living crap out of me. Like, he was very much, who's the character from Pride and Prejudice, the guy who like can't take no, that ends up marrying her friend?
Mr. Collins?
Mr. Collins. No.
Mr. Collins, right? Yeah. He's like
you
the
mean
Mr. Collins.
Your soulmate, or your soul brother?
Yeah, right. He's like, Sanjay is like the Mr. Collins of this book, but like cranked up to 11, because he is just so obnoxious and so manipulative, and like, oh my God. But those scenes will like live on in my brain because I was so frustrated. I just wanted to reach through the book and like shake him because he was stressing me out so much.
Can I tell you something that's going to make me seem like a horrible person?
Well, you would have gone to India?
Yeah, please do.
No, I would not have gone to India.
The money?
Yes, when she inherits the money and she decides to share it.
I wouldn't have shared it. So I said, oh, that's nice.
That was very nice, especially because she shared it like evenly, like 4 ways. And I was like, no, girl. And especially because it doesn't sound like much money, and like, it's like £5,000 each. I'm like, no, girl, you did too much.
100 would have been fine.
Yeah, buy them a nice dinner. Not even 100. Like, oh, guys, I got dinner. No, I got it tonight. It's on me.
It's on me.
Lizzy, what is the scene that we didn't talk about, or something about this book we didn't talk about, that sticks out in your brain that you're like, we should have talked more about this?
Honestly, just Jane as a character is probably going to stick with me for a long time, because she is the most level-headed and accommodating person while also telling the rest of the world to move. Because throughout the book, she has people telling her what she should believe in, how she should act on those beliefs, and she's very firm at the end of the day in what she believes in, and she sees it through, and I love that about her. She's just a very strong character all around.
So even the way that she like knew herself enough to know, I can't stay here with you because I'm going to like not stick to this decision, and I need to stick to this decision for myself. Like, I have to leave or I'm going to like give in and marry you. Like, that's amazing. That's a lot of strength.
She very much has
I would
that
marry
like
the rich man.
With
Like,
weapon
all
at
right.
it. All right. It's a big manor.
Yeah, there's lots of rooms. You don't have to stay in the same room. Yeah, she very much has that, like, mentality of, like, you know, characters where, like, the worst thing that can possibly happen to them has happened to them. So, like, nothing else, you know, they're strong enough to get through everything else. Her childhood is so traumatic that the stuff that happens to her as an adult is, like, she's strong enough to deal with it because her childhood was, like, so challenging. It kind of, like, shaped her.
How she approaches her aunt on her aunt's deathbed.
Oh gosh,
How she
yeah.
approached that whole situation, I was like, you are strong.
Because I would have been. Well, never mind. I'm not gonna do the judging.
Well, look who's dying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have workshopped it. That would have been the first draft. But like,
And guess who's waiting in heaven to judge the fuck out of you?
And on that
so
note,
we gotta end this now.
And on that note, that is our discussion of Jane Eyre. Now, next on our romance journey, we gave all of you the power to vote on whether or not we would read this next book, and you chose wrong, so we are going to be reading Wuthering Heights next by Emily Bronte. So I think what is going to be interesting about this book is it is not technically a romance. However, there are a lot of aspects of the book that still influence romance books to this day. So I think it's going to be an interesting book to read. And
I think it'll be a book.
you know, the past two books we've read, we've all really enjoyed. I think it's high time we read something we didn't enjoy. And
Wuthering Heights.
maybe some of us will enjoy it. You never know.
That's
Who
true.
has read
That's
it
true.
already? I've never read it.
I've never read it.
No,
I haven't
a long
even
time
pretended to
ago.
read it for a class, like Pride and Prejudice.
I
really
picked it
haven't
up
read
in like my 20s, I think, to try and read it, and I bounced off of it so hard and vowed never to come back. So look at what you've made me do.
And here we are. And Lizzy, you said you've read it before?
Yeah, and I also, it took forever to get through it, that I'm not going to remember most of it, but I mean, at least we know it's not a romance. So the experience going into it.
Yeah.
What is this about? Like, oh my god!
I think I don't even want to know. I think
Okay.
I
No,
loved
I'm
Jane Eyre
surprised.
so much because I didn't know what it was about. I think it's best if we don't know. And I think,
Okay.
I think if anything, it will kind of give us a barometer going forward so we could really talk about like the romance genre and what, you know, is and isn't and all that fun stuff. I think it'll be a maybe not so fun read, but a fun conversation.
It
So,
always is when we're together.
oh, we're all the wife in the attic of each other's hearts.
Aw.
Jaysen can do a heart.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do a heart. Let's do it again. Do it again. There, yay! Oh, it's beautiful. So that was our poll. I'm going to do another poll this month for if we should read. What was the book called?
Something C.
Wide
The first
Sargasso
one?
Sea.
Wide Sargasso Sea. I'll do a poll to see if we should read that as a special festive Christmas episode, and
We're in our hats.
with our Christmas hats.
Oh, ho, ho.
Oh, literally.
A fun little novella, like modern romance novella, if we wanted a break after Wuthering Heights.
Wide Sargasso Sea.
Or we could read Wide Sargasso Sea. That's what I said. I'm pretty sure that's what I said. Yeah.
We could do both, possibly. We could do both. Like, it would be fun to do like a Christmas themed episode where we read a Christmas romance of some kind, and I'm sure we could find something cute to do that with.
Like a Christmas
so,
Carol.
Not a romance, but okay.
Well, agree to disagree. Huh. The ghost was making eyes. Never mind.
Okay, so before we go, make sure if you've watched this, if you've enjoyed it, if you watched it on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts on Jane Eyre. If you're listening to us, you can also listen to the Panelists podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a rating. Let us know if you're enjoying the show. Please subscribe there as well. That really helps us get more eyes, ears on our podcast. And before we go, I want to make sure that you know how to find all of our wonderful panelists. Mari, where can they find you?
You can find me all over social media at My Name is Marinés.
Wonderful. And Niah, where can they find you?
You can find me everywhere at Novel Niah.
Perfect. And Lizzy?
You can find me at BumbleBeezus on TikTok and YouTube, and Beezus Books on Instagram.
And you can find me at EasyCat everywhere. I will also put those in the description of this video, so it is easy to find everyone.
You can find everyone in our attic hearts, too.
Oh, yeah.
Are we all
And
in?
you can find all of us in the attic of our men.
After the next episode's filmed.
The next episode, we just film with like an attic background behind us. It's not problematic at all.
No, we didn't say that.
Oh my god. Thank you all so much for listening to the Panelists, and we will see you back here next month for Wuthering Heights.
Bye.
Bye.